Hello and welcome back to the Boropolis Podcast. I'm back with Nathan. We had the opposition preview for the Coventry game, but Nathan, it's brilliant to have you back on the channel, really. It seems like you haven't been on for a while. I've been talking to everyone. But
Yeah, it's been a while, actually, yeah, with all the international break and that last week. But yeah, back to the Boro action this weekend, and what a performance to talk about.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you how you were, to be honest, before we got into the performance. Yeah, during the international break, I mean, I would say I had missed watching Middlesbrough until this weekend. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of them. I think the international break holds you all on a thread. I think really you want to watch your club because of all the gaps in between watching England. But yeah, what a weekend to go back to.
What a weekend, yeah. Yeah, well, the good thing is I think the last podcast we done at the end of it, everyone who watched it on YouTube was probably sick of me constantly going like this with my hair. I have had a haircut, as you can see. So, I mean, at least I won't be doing that. That's one positive for people watching.
Probably one of the only positives of this
podcast. It's not much of a positive, but I mean, yeah. It depends if you're interested. Everyone's probably just thinking, just start talking about the football. So we'll get into it. God. Coventry 2, Middlesbrough 0. Like I do every time, we're just going to start with the team lineup. Obviously, I think the best place to start is really the lineup come out, and as we were getting into the stadium, everyone got the news that Paddy McNair had been withdrawn with an injury. Sol Bamba replaced him, but with the team news, how did you feel when you seen that team?
Yeah, so both of us were at the game this weekend. Not together, but we were both at the game, and I was in the stand watching the warm-up, and I did recognise that when the defenders warm up together, they throw the ball up to them to head away and do some warming up as a defensive unit, and McNair was not on the pitch and Bamba was there on the left-hand side, and I thought, that's a bit strange. And I said to the person who I was with, I said, I'm sure that means he'll be starting, because I couldn't see McNair there, and I thought we could be in for a bit of a shaky afternoon today, looking at Bamba on that left-hand side of defence. We know that he lacks a bit of pace, and yeah, I think it's a strange one looking at the team, really. Isaiah Jones playing at left wing back as a makeshift left-hand side defender, with Bowler missing out. But yeah, a very strange lineup to look at, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a double negative for me, really. Obviously, we were texting each other before the game, and for those that watched the opposition preview, they knew that I had Alex, who was on the opposition preview for Coventry. We went down. That's why my voice is a little bit croaky. I don't know if you can tell, to be fair, with being out a few nights. So yeah, it's a little bit croaky, but like I say, double negative. We went into the casino. I said to Alex, I'll get you a drink. You know, we're at your place of business, if you want to call it that. Gone in $5.70 a pint. I mean, that was already. I told you about it and told you to avoid it, but that was already just. I mean, it got off to a bad start, didn't it? From that point, I should have just left.
Absolute shambles. Yeah,
it was, but yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe it, to be honest. And I nearly just said, "No, you're all right, actually, mate." But yeah, we're seeing Bamba in that starting 11. I think. Obviously, we can't judge him too much, and when the lineup come out, obviously I think it would be fair to say that we are a weaker team without Paddy McNair in it. So that was obviously the first thing. It was obviously, like you say, clear to see in the warm-up that it was going to be a back three of Fry, Hall and Bamba, with Isaiah Jones playing as the left wing back. Now, I just want to talk about this firstly, because Isaiah Jones has been fantastic and wasn't terrible, definitely not. Done as well as he could, I thought. I think he got caught out a few times through positioning, but in fairness to him, he is a left winger, so it's to be expected. I just think from minute one, the formation was wrong, really.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about it quite a lot on this podcast. With when we play three at the back, we do lack pace in that back line. Even with McNair in the back line, we lack pace. So Bamba being the man to replace him on that left-hand side, when in the defensive unit, your central centre-half is usually your one that lacks any sort of real pace. With looking at Coventry's, McFadzean's that man who sits in there in the middle and just nods balls away, gets balls down and knocks it to the other centre-halves to deal with it. So Hall was the central one, of course. We know about Hall's lack of pace and the possibility of him being caught out. So Bamba being alongside him on that left is a bit of a problem when you look at it. And of course, we've spoken previously as well about Anthony Dijksteel playing at wing back, and I think we both agree that that's not his best natural position at all. I don't think he has the ability to get up and down really. He's just his stature. He's not built like a proper wing back.
I think with Dijksteel, obviously out of the two, Mark Ball misses out, and I just want to touch on that a little bit after we've spoken about this. But Dijksteel is more, for me, if you were going to compare him to, say, a Premier League player, I would say sort of Wan-Bissaka. Now, Wan-Bissaka gets so much praise for his defensive ability and the fact that rarely anyone actually gets past him, but going forward, he does lack that sort of end product. And typically what a wing back is wanted to do, that's the role in the team, to get forward and get back, but more so add a threat as a wide presence, really. And that was really our downfall quite a lot in the first half. Obviously, we're going into the game now, but in the first half, and especially in the second half, there was times where obviously, because of the formation, Jones was getting so high, and as a winger, that is what he does. He gets at opposition's fullbacks, and he's in the team to cause problems, but it was causing us problems. I've double pronounced problems there. Because obviously Jones was getting so high, and it was effectively leaving Bamba as the outside of the three, so effectively a left back, really. And obviously with Girakes, who isn't really quick, and Waghorn, who isn't massively quick either, and without sounding too negative, both of them were beating Bamba for pace every time. So any ball in behind was just causing us problems. And again, that's not really Bamba's fault. In a back four, or as you say, the central of the back three, it probably would have been all right. But because Bamba was the third on the left, it was just all afternoon, it just seemed like that was their route into getting in behind us. And I mean, we'll talk about it again later. That was what cost us the goal, really, the first goal.
Yeah, I mean, just going back, looking at that left-hand side for us, with Bamba at left central defence, and Jones on that left wing-back position. Of course, Jones is going to get forward, and it isn't his fault playing in that position. He's obviously naturally a left winger and will look to attack more than defend, obviously, which does leave Bamba isolated. And yeah, the lack of pace was a massive problem, but fair play to Coventry as well. When we talk about wing backs and what we want in a wing back, I think Dabo and Martson were fantastic for them, going both ways, defending really well, and of course getting forward really well and providing some sort of outlet down those wings for them. And of course the midfielders as well. The midfield for them was Hamer, Allen, and O'Hare. Yeah. So those three kept interchanging, one of them had come wide, and they'd play triangles with whichever wing back it may be, whether it be Dabo or Martson. One of the midfielders had come across, and one of the centre forwards in Gyökeres or Waghorn had come across, and they'd play triangles around Bamba. So we were completely battered down that side, really.
For me, obviously, we tried to match them up in terms of style and formation, but it was just so clear to see Coventry were a team that have played that formation for probably 2-3 years now under Robbins. They've been well drilled into it. The wing backs, as you say, know their jobs now. Dabo's been there 2 or 3 years now, I think, and Martin's obviously just signed on loan. But they're both well drilled. They know their jobs, and that was really our sticking point. I thought it was meant to be style versus the same style, and it just looked like someone that knew how to play that style and someone that had just been told get into that formation, but actually we don't really know what individual roles were meant to be doing, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just going on that wing back battle, their wing backs were just streets ahead of ours, unfortunately. Dijksteel didn't match up with Martin at all. And Jones, of course, with Dabo. Dabo had that physical edge on Jones. Jones, of course, has the pace to beat him down the line. I'm not saying Dabo's not quick, but Jones did have the beating of him in that first half down the line a couple of times. But yeah, those triangles down the sides for them were very, very important and did give them a massive advantage in creating chances against us in that first half as well.
Yeah, and obviously it has been a few weeks since we've done the podcast because of the international break and things like that. We haven't really had a chance to talk about Mark Bowler now. I know he was missing through injury, and obviously we don't want to say too much in terms of the potential ban that he may be getting. But one thing I do want to say is, how can someone be banned for something that they said when they were 14 years old? Now, I know obviously there is things you can't say, and that is totally fine. If he was tweeting that now, it would be Middlesbrough fans would be as angry as what the FA are, and rightly so. Of course, you can't say things like that. And to be honest, we don't even know what was said. At least I don't know, but we know what sort of nature they are, the comments that were made. But growing up and going from being 14 to the age you are now, I just wanted to quickly address it. Now, you can have your opinion as well, but it's just part of growing up. I mean, when you're 14, you're still a kid. You like different things. You probably think when you're 14 years old that WWE's all real. You think The Undertaker does actually go into his coffin and then come back alive 10 minutes later. You're a complete different person. The FA, they just need to realise that you can't be fining people for what they said when they were 13 or 14. It's just ridiculous. I just need to get that off my chest because I've been holding that in since we last spoke, and it's just ridiculous, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just plain stupid, I think. Of course, when you're 14, you don't really think of any sort of consequences. You first get social media, really, and you just post whatever you want, whatever. You don't really think about what you're posting, do you? So
exactly, you post ridiculous things. I mean, I probably can't even remember half the stuff I was even saying when I was 14, but
no,
probably wasn't. I wouldn't echo the thoughts of what I think now. Definitely not. It's just part of growing up, but it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Of course. And I went through my social media a good few years ago now, and looking back when I was about 13, 14 year old, you just think, what am I even doing there? Like, what am I even talking about?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sure Mark Bowler is looking back thinking, yeah, just a daft post, but yeah, I don't think you should be punished for it when you're 14. Just the FA can look at it, flag it up, and go, or maybe you want to go through your social media and delete these old posts, but making a big deal about it and disciplining him. All right, well, fair enough. They can do whatever they want, unfortunately. So
yeah, but I mean, in terms of Bowler, I think we're just finished talking about wing backs and full backs, and to be fair, we did actually miss Bowler, and I know it was through injury, wasn't through the fine and the potential ban, but we did actually, I thought, really miss Mark Bowler down that left.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only natural left-sided defender at the club, and we'd spoken about this a lot throughout the transfer window, saying, crying out for a left-sided defender. And then Coulson got shipped out the door on loan, and we thought, all right, something must be quite close then if he's being allowed to move on. And nothing. So,
well, I mean, this last week it was Warnock had said in his press conference, didn't he, that the week after the transfer window, it looked as though we were going to bring in a left-sided defender, and I think everyone really knows it was probably Kean Bryan who went to West Brom, and that would have been fantastic. It would have given us cover at left centre back. It would have given us cover at left back. But for me, it's still, if Bola is going to continue to have these injury problems, it needs to be sorted out sooner or later, because we're just, without a left-sided defender, I mean, it's just the balance of the team is completely wrong, and the nature of the result that we saw at Coventry will, for me, continue if we don't sort it out.
Yeah, we just looked completely not one-sided, but we didn't have that option down that left side, and we got battered for it down that wing. Unfortunately, Jones, they did target him a lot just because he's out of position, playing in that left wing back role, and he was out of position a lot in the game because he's not played in that position at all. So yeah, a strange one from the club, not sorting something out. Maybe we too reliant on the player that we were trying to get in, but that's just the unfortunate thing. You can't be reliant on players, unfortunately, until they're through the door. The deal's not done, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we talking about that? But I mean, transfer window's finished now, so yeah, we'll talk more about the game now. In terms of the first half, I think Coventry probably had the better of it. We saw Joe Lumley make a good save, in fairness, from Martin Waghorn. We also saw a Dale Fry block on the line. I cannot remember who it was. I think it was Girakez, actually, who had the final shot, and somehow it managed to be deflected over the bar. But it certainly wouldn't have been an unfair reflection of the first half had Coventry gone in with the lead.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. They seem to play a lot of good, intricate passing round our 18-yard box, and at times it was wave upon wave of attack. But we did have a couple of chances in that first half. Tavernier had an effort that was deflected that the keeper made a good save from, and we played some half okay football around their box as well, with Jones and Hernandez looking to create a few things. Hernandez fizzed a ball across the 6-yard box that no one was on the end of. But yeah, it just looks like we don't really create all that much, really. We'll have a few chances in a game, and if we don't finish those chances, then we're struggling seriously.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time under Aitor Karanka, and even at times under Woodgate, Monk, I mean, other managers, I think we've always thought that, we've gone through these spells where we haven't really been able to threaten and score. And obviously, it seems like we're very much going in on the team. But of course, we've got 3 or 4 new players. We've brought in Sparrow, we've brought in Hernandez, of course, Piero, those type of players. They're going to need bedded in, and potentially this will just sound ridiculous in a few weeks. We'll have started scoring goals. But to me, even on Saturday, it doesn't look like, we just can't get that final touch and we're going to go and batter someone in a few weeks. It just looks like it's 2 or 3 chances, like you say, and then it's just not. If you don't score them, it's nothing.
Yeah, it's very strange, actually. Looking at it, we had 8 shots on Saturday.
Yeah.
5 on target, and 3 of them were all in the space of 30 seconds. So
yeah,
I mean, and we didn't finish one of them. So it's just very strange, really. It doesn't look very, very promising on the goal scoring front at all, does it really?
And I mean, it's quite ironic, isn't it, Nathan? I sent in an expected goals table that we saw on Twitter, and you had to educate me on it a little bit, because I must say I'm not the biggest fan of stats. I think they can be a little bit misleading, but I think in terms of expected goals now, Nathan, if you want to sort of briefly just talk about it a little bit, what that means and really how misleading stats can be, because I mean, where were Middlesbrough in the table? Was it 6th?
We were 6th in the table, which is quite outstanding from where we are now. I think where are we currently? 15th. So yeah, looking at the table of this expected goals table, we are 6th, which is just inside the playoffs, and we have apparently got one of the better defences in the division, which doesn't look at all true looking on Saturday's performance.
I think that would be the nice way of putting it, to be honest.
Yeah, and it says that, so we looking at the table, this expected wins table as well. It says that we should have won 4 games this season. So looking at that, and looking at this table, Fulham were expected to beat us on that first game of the season, which of course, going into that last 20 minutes, we could have quite easily nicked a win there, which would have been fantastic, of course. But yeah, looking at this table, it'd take into consideration a win at Derby, which I was at that game and I didn't think that we deserved to win that game. We hit the bar, but barring that, we didn't have many chances at all. I think it's taken into consideration the Blackburn game and giving us a win there from the chances that we possibly had.
Yeah.
And the other loss that it's taken, so the losses table, is Fulham and Coventry. And I think that's a complete fair reflection from the Coventry game. They absolutely had us, had our number on Saturday afternoon. But yeah, it just proves how misleading the stats are, saying that we are a playoff side currently based on expected goals and expected goals conceded.
Just obviously, I know I'm not claiming that you are some sort of expert, but just for those that may be listening or watching, can you sort of kind of explain? I mean, the listeners may have a better understanding of us, but just in case.
So expected goals is just a metric that is used to evaluate how big chances should be converted into goals, really. And it can be expected goals scored or expected goals conceded. So the table here says that we should have only scored 7 goals this season, which shows that we are a team that usually win games by a 1-goal margin, really. And we should have, according to this table, only conceded 5. So I'm guessing that takes into consideration the defeat this weekend and, of course, the defeat against Fulham, which we didn't actually have on that opening day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really don't think that it reflects fairly.
The point we're trying to make really is just when a lot of people on, I think especially on Twitter, be fair, very quick to say, well, these statistics, point towards that we should be winning these games, but it is just misleading. So yeah, I think when you are judging us this season, I would just urge, and of course stats do have their good points. We've seen how successful Brentford have been, but obviously, yeah, I think from our perspectives, it's more a case of the performances this season so far, and just obviously continuing with the Coventry performance. We'll just talk about their goal really from now, and it was Victor Gyökeres who looked a threat all day, I must say, who managed to squeeze the ball past, I think it was
Howson
and Jones, was it on the line? Yeah, I mean, we've all seen the screenshot now going around. How we managed to squeeze it between the two of them, I'm not quite sure. It was Dijksteel who originally missed the tackle, but I mean, was it any surprise when Coventry took the lead for you?
I think it was in a part of the game where I think it was quite end-to-end, really. But our line does appear to be very high. In the video clip, Gyökeres runs pretty much the full length of the pitch.
As well, considering how slow our 3 defenders are. I mean, I don't think even they'd say that they were the 3 most gifted for pace.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, he ran from about the halfway line, tussling with Dykesdale. Dykesdale missed the tackle, and then Gyökeres rounds Lumley and slots home. But yeah, it all comes from a loss of possession. It was Tavernier that lost possession in midfield. Something that all day appeared to be quite a regular theme in midfield, losing possession quite easily. And yeah, we got punished for it.
Yeah, and then from that moment, really, our best chance of the game sort of happened. Obviously, we did at the bar through Matt Crooks. Now, this is one of the chances we're talking about. Obviously, we get 1, 2 or 3 chances, and it seems like at the moment, if we don't take them, we will lose games. And again, we've hit the bar, and then following that, the game passed us by a little bit in a spell, I thought. And then ultimately, Wycombe makes it 2-0. Tricks his way past Bamba. He did it once in the first half, and Lumley pulled off the great save, but it wasn't to be the case, and they scored late on and got their deserved win, really.
Yeah, there was no doubt that they deserved to win on Saturday. But in that spell after Crooks nodding against the bar, there just seemed to be absolutely no urgency from us, unfortunately. It didn't look like we were really trying to push every man forward to try and get that equaliser. It just looked like we were passing the game by, just almost happy to just accept that we were down 1-0 and that we weren't going to be able to get anything from this game, and stood in the away end. You just thought, why? Just go for it.
I mean, you always know it's a real sign of what are we doing here when the away end starts chanting attack, attack, attack. Because at that point, you know something's gone seriously wrong.
Yeah, it was just so crazy to see the midfield have hold of the ball, and they'd just be passing it sideways and sideways and sideways.
It seemed like so many times, whether it was Howson or it was Crooks or even Dykesdale. I mean, he likes to step in normally and in his role as a wing back, make passes infield and sort of create chances through that route. But Warnock spoke after the game that there was a few bits of body language that he saw that he wasn't happy with, and it just seemed like the ball was just bouncing off people's feet, or they were just making the wrong choice. It just absolutely nothing clicked into place at all, really.
I 100% agree with the body language thing. One player that I picked out, and it's going to sound absolutely horrific, this, like I'm absolutely battering him, because I did post out a reply to your unpopular opinion tweet saying Marcus Tavernier is overrated, which doesn't mean I called him horrific or bad.
I'm just gonna let you talk here and justify yourself, because a lot of people seem to think that you don't rate him at all, which is not.
Yeah, it's not the case at all. So I posted a reply to the Boropolis tweet which said unpopular Boro opinions, and I replied with Marcus Tavernier is horrifically overrated by plenty of Boro fans. Now, that does not mean I called him either bad or say that he doesn't offer anything or anything of the sort. All it means is people think that he's much better than he really is. And I think that kind of leads me on to this point, which, of course, I was quite frustrated after Saturday's game, obviously travelling down to Coventry, and we were pretty abject all day. And Tavernier's body language was just not what you want to see as a fan, unfortunately. Just throwing his arms all over the place, just looked kind of lazy, unfortunately. And from what
I think with Tav, I do think, in fairness, he's sort of the person that everyone really expects to make things happen. So when it doesn't go his way, of course, he's going to get frustrated. And with the formation, again, I think it comes from that almost, because if you're playing in the number 10 role and you're expected to be on the half turn, play passes in behind the defence, make things happen, when you really have nothing going on ahead of you, and that is as a result of the formation. Of course, you're going to get frustrated, but like you say, it's not the best thing to see when you have travelled. The body language can be as frustrating for the manager as what is us watching.
Yeah, and I don't even necessarily think it's the things that are going on in front of him either, but I think possibly in a system there on Saturday, playing in that midfield role where we try and man-mark midfielders and we try and man-mark all over the pitch, Tav in his position where he wants to be as that number 10 is almost sacrificed to be an extra defender to follow their midfielders, which it isn't great at all, because I think going into any championship game, no matter where it is, whether it be Fulham away, or whether it be who's bottom of the league, Forest. I mean, brilliant, as if we've got them tomorrow.
I mean, yeah, we'll get onto that later.
Forest or Forest at home, say, I think you should just go for games. Coventry didn't not respect us the other day. They just went for us. They just went for us and played their own game and just attacked us and tried to create things and went for our throats. And instead of man marking, sorry, Chris, instead of man marking all over the pitch, I think we should just start going for games. Play Tavernier in that number 10 role and let him try and create things. If he doesn't create, then fair enough. We have other players that can try and create in there. Hernandez can create, Crooks can create. Just we have the players to play in a system where we can create a lot of chances, and instead of just creating the one or two, maybe 3 chances per game, and that is it. And if we don't finish them, then it's whatever the score is, Middlesbrough 0. I just don't see why we don't go for games and try and just go for teams instead of just sitting back. And I do understand that if you do go for teams, you can get battered, like comfortably battered. But that was just horrifically abject the other day, really, look, from my perspective.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, I think you've nailed it. And I think you've nailed, obviously, we tweeted out, and we'll get on to them later as well, what's going wrong for Middlesbrough at the moment. And a large proportion of the replies, pretty much the frustration comes from the fact that we've brought all of these new players in, and of course they need to adapt, but it should be on us to take games to teams. And no disrespect to Coventry, because Coventry did that to us. They thought, well, if you're not going to attack us, then that's not going to stop us from doing it.
Exactly. Why would they care what we're trying to do? They play their own game. They play good football, and they got amongst us and tried to harass us. When we were in possession of the ball, they pressed really well, and they won the ball quite high up the pitch quite often during the game, and they played some really good football round our 18-yard box and created chances for themselves. And in the end, the first goal comes from a sloppy loss of possession because Coventry were in their shape, and they pounced on it. They pounced on our lapse of concentration in midfield. So yeah, fair play to them for coming and just playing their own game, and they got the just rewards in the end. And we look just, again, I think the word is just abject. We were just abject the other day.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, unless there's anything else you want to discuss from that game. I mean, I know Sparrow and Siliki and obviously Hernandez all made their debuts. For me, I thought all 3 of them brought something different to what we have seen. And to be honest, it's part of the reason why we are frustrated, and I think it echoes a lot of what other fans are feeling at the moment as well. Play them. Play the players that we've signed.
Of course, yeah.
Because Siliki come on, and yes, he was dispossessed a few times. As we say, it does take time to adapt. But I think at this point, what have we got to lose, really?
Yeah, of course. I agree with you there. I think all 3 of them did provide some good quality for us. I think Hernandez in that first half particularly was playing some quite decent one-touch stuff when we did have a few opportunities around the box. He was just getting into positions and knocking the ball off, trying to set things up and trying to link play. I think he was playing a bit out of position to where he'd usually want to be. Usually want to be off that left-hand side in a forward three, but he was more of someone playing off Uche, who didn't have his best game the other day, Uche as well. But yeah, Saliki and Sparar came on. I thought Saliki, yeah, you're right, he did get dispossessed a few times. He just weren't really gathering the pace of the game straight away, but he did play some good passes, put some good crosses into the box. I think it was him who put the cross on to Crooks' head, who hit the bar, and then Sparar looks another good acquisition, really. Gathering the ball on his chest, knocking the ball down. He looks quite physical. And
I must admit, I was impressed with Sparar. I thought he looked really neat and tidy. And to be honest, as much as Uche's made a good impression so far, I think, like you say, the game was really set up for Coventry to just sort of mark him out. Well, not mark him out the game, wrestle him out the game, to be honest, because McFadzean, that's probably his perfect game. Because if you're playing balls in behind, he's not the quickest. I think
of course.
That ultimately that's Coventry's style, and we'll go back to it. I feel like I've said this 2 or 3 times now. Coventry did to us what we should have done to Coventry. And we were trying to play off Uche with Hernandez, and Sparar, I think when he come on, it was more neat and tidy, get the ball at feet, and then spin, play off him and that sort of thing, rather than just try and hit Big Uche and play off him when he's got McFadzean and Jake Clark-Salter, wrestling with him. So I just, again, the game was won and lost through styles. I think ultimately that's my final verdict of the game. Nathan, unless you wanted to say anything else on that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. They fit their system perfectly. I think for us, it was a case of putting square pegs in round holes almost, really, with Jones being shoehorned into left wing back. Hernandez being placed as that almost like not a number 10, but like someone to support Uche up front. Tavernier was almost in the midfield 3, almost, with Crooks as well. Crooks and Tavernier are not centre midfielders, unfortunately. They need to be playing further forward. And of course, Bamba playing on the left of the back 3. We've spoken many a time. I know I'm repeating myself, but we've spoken way too often about the need for pace in that back 3. And Coventry, they have that with their wide centre backs. McFadzean's the one that just picks up the loose balls and will tussle with players. But if you play balls in down the side of him, I think you're in for a good day, really, instead of just smashing balls up front, because it was clear to see, even on our corners. I think this is something that needs to be spoken about as well. On corners and set pieces, looking at the players that we have Grant Hall, Dale Fry, Uche, Crooks, all big, tall lads. We didn't win a header off a set piece or a corner the other day. In an attacking phase, McFadzean continuously didn't move on corners or set pieces, and the ball was just played on his head every single time.
Yeah, I think it was a point that I had seen in the comments, and to be fair, I was actually going to bring it up, so it leads quite nicely into that, into the assumptions and questions from Twitter. But yeah, I echo your thoughts. I do think for the size of our team, we do not pose a threat at all from set pieces.
No. And I'd just like to say as well, I know this is a bit strange, but fair play to the Coventry fans as well. I thought they were outstanding the other day in that corner next to the away fans. They made a lot of noise, and it was probably one of the best home fans I've seen in a long time.
Well, yeah, for any Coventry fans listening, maybe, and wanting to gloat about your victory, there you go. There's your little bit of praise from us. We'll stop talking about you now because it's definitely made the results angered a few of our fans. I think that would be the fairest thing to say.
Your mate Alex will be absolutely buzzing with how we're talking
Oh well,
about Coventry.
yeah. I mean, we did. We went out in Coventry after the game, and Alex had a good time. I think we'll put it that way because we'll see the result went his way. Yeah, moving on from that though, we have the assumptions and questions from Twitter. And the first one from Martin_M simply said, I think the manager has a lot to answer for. Now, it's early doors in this season and it's a big talking point already. In my opinion, I think it is far too early to be talking about Neil Warnock. Even I can't believe I'm saying it so early. I think it is too early to be wanting him out, especially with the signings that we've brought in. I think it would just be ludicrous to bring 13 or 12 new signings, whatever it was, and then 6 games into the season, say, right, see you later.
Yeah.
I do understand the frustration. I do completely. His style is not something that is the most enjoyable to watch, but I do think in terms of just timing alone, that factor enough is just, it would be a no for me now at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't help with the injuries that we have at this current time. Of course, McNair is probably is definitely a starter in that back three for us. He was going to start on Saturday, and he probably would have made a difference on that left side of defence, coping with the pace that they had up front. Really, Baller at left back, of course, massive miss for us when he's not in the side, which is fantastic considering Baller was at Blackpool not too long ago and has made such a difference in the last year that he's literally one of the most integral parts of that team at this current time. And he was a massive miss on Saturday. And I think Piero, of course, was meant to.
Of course. There was the comments after the game, and I do think, especially when a few fans, I mean, a few is probably underselling it a bit. I think a lot of people are, and it does sort of shock me to say this, a little bit already done with the whole Warnock experiment. I personally don't agree with that line of thought. I think if it does get to Christmas time or January and results haven't improved, then yeah, it's a different conversation. But I think currently we're not even 10 games in, so I don't want to go down that route too early. But there was the comments that he made about Piero and the fact that he was probably going to play against Coventry had he not have gone over on his ankle. But there was a lot of anger at the fact he'd said, it was his birthday and he can't speak English. It couldn't get any worse for Piero. Now, for me, I think the comments have sort of been a little bit misconstrued. I don't think it was him mocking Piero. I think it was more just, he does say a lot of these things tongue in cheek. And obviously when things aren't going so well, people just take it as, in the wrong way, as opposed to if we had have won and he'd said that, no one would have cared about it. So yeah. I think, obviously, we do want to see Piero playing, but for me, I didn't read anything into that. I don't know about you, Nathan.
No, I don't think it needs reading into, really. Yeah, I think it's fair enough. I know it's just a tongue-in-cheek thing, but he is a young lad in a country where he doesn't know the language. He doesn't really know anyone here. And it is his birthday and he's injured and can't be travelling with the only people he knows over here.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a fair enough thing to say, really. I don't see the problem with it at all.
Yeah, well, another assumption that was left was from Chunky82. Now, I don't know if I've actually typed that in wrong or if the name actually was Chunky82 on Twitter, but yeah, I'm sure whoever's put that comment will realise it's them that's left it. But yeah, they basically talked about the integration of the new players and basically that we just need them to settle in And he also went on to say that pretty much a few of our regular performers have been slightly off the boil. And I think he's pretty much nailed it there for me. I think, like we said with Sparrow and Siliki and Hernandez, Piero, the list goes on. It is a case of, yes, we want them to take time and integrate and get them up to fitness and things like that. But the frustration is obviously just coming from the fact that, I think mainly from Piero, to be honest, that he's not playing. So I think only time's going to tell. If say in another 2 or 3 weeks these players aren't starting, then definitely there's reason to be annoyed. But I think, to be honest, I think if at least Siliki and Sparrow aren't starting against Forest, I'd be very surprised. I'd put it that way. So maybe give it a week before we start going too much into that as well.
Yeah, I think Siliki needs to start against Forest. I think he'll be the man that sits in there with Johnny Howson. I think we need a serious change of formation, really. Looking at that from Saturday, the three at the pack simply doesn't work with the personnel that we had available for Saturday. So yeah, I think you're right. Siliki, get him in. That'll be one of the new players integrated into the first team. And it looks like he can make a difference in there as well. Spray passes about. He has the legs to get about as well, it looks like. And it looks like he's quite a large built physical unit in midfield as well to deal with the physical aspects of the championship, which of course players do need to get used to because it is a very physical division. And I think that when he first came on the other day, Siliki getting dispossessed a few times was probably a shock to the system, that you're not going to get that much time on the ball.
Of course.
Really.
Yeah.
You are going to get harassed and you will get pressed when you're in possession of the ball. So yeah, I think just the only way that these players are going to be integrated into that squad is through giving them game time and getting them used to how the championship plays, really.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of what you said there. And I mean, you sort of touched on it when you were first talking about the previous comment, but Andy McFarlane left a comment simply saying, we now don't have a manager that suits our players. And I think, again, it goes back to formation, really. I do think that there's probably never going to be a time where Warnock's just going to say, all of the attacking players that we've got, Jones, Tavernier, Crooks, Ikpeazu, Sparrow, we're going to put them all in the same team and just go for it. I must say, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's just, it's probably a pointless thought. And I know that can be frustrating, but it's just not going to happen with Neil Warnock. But I do think releasing the shackles and sort of letting the likes of Tav, Sparrow have that freedom is just loosening the shackles, really, and just saying we can afford to have Howson and Bamba or Hall or Fry or Hall or whichever parent it is, and just say we need to take the game to other teams as opposed to soak it up and maybe create one chance and just hope that we take that chance. I think it's just a style thing again, really.
Yeah, I think it's just, yeah, you're right with the style. I think we do play 3 a lot to sort of combat the defensive unit, really, and how good they really are. I think we did in a lot of spells the other day get found out with that defensive unit and how good they really are. But I'd just love to see us just playing a 4 and just go for teams. Playing a 4 with 2 defensive midfielders sitting in front, maybe, well, it will be Howson and probably Siliki that sit in there. Siliki will be the one that runs about and tries to break up play where Howson sits in, picks up the pieces and just knocks the ball out wide to our wide players that look to create things. but I can't see it happening at this current time, unfortunately. With especially with the problem at left back and that left side of defence, I think we're just going to have to bear with, unfortunately, for now.
Yeah. Now, there was another comment that I thought was really interesting. It's the final one that I picked out. Left from the username, just simply BK. That was all it is. So whoever's initials that is, I'm guessing it must be initials. Yeah, this was your comment that I thought was interesting. He just said, or she, I'm not 100% sure, think the club is in a transitional era. And I've seen a lot of talk this week, especially on social media, saying, we're in a transitional era. And with Warnock, I think that this season might already be a write-off and things like that. I think to talk is a difficult one because we are. I hate the phrase transitional era because it seems like we've almost been in one for about 5 years now. It's just never ended.
Since we've been relegated.
Yeah, it's all just rolled into one. I think the golden thread in Gary Monk and Tony Pulis are all part of the same transitional period that just never quite worked out, to be honest.
Yeah.
But obviously, Kieran Scott's come in, and I think we saw his interview this week and the fact that he's going to oversee, as his job title says, really everything to do with football, whether that be recruitment from the academy side or from the first team side. And after Warnock, of course, for me, I think we'll probably look abroad and I think we'll go with a whole new style.
I do, yeah.
But the talk of a transitional era, I think it needs to just be forgotten. We need to simply focus on the here and now and stop thinking of what might be, because if Warnock isn't going to be the man when it gets to January, then okay. I mean, it seems ridiculous again, but it just feels like we're at that point in the season where it's really on a knife edge because 2 or 3 wins and everyone will be back on side, but 2 or 3 losses and the crowd could really go. So, I mean, I hope, I love Neil Warnock. I hope it doesn't get to that point, but let's just try and leave the transitional period alone and let's just focus on the here and now and the results that hopefully are going to go in our way in the next few weeks. Nathan, I'll let you talk because I feel like I've just gone on a mini rant there.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, really. Of course, it's a strange one looking at the club in the last, well, in just the last few months, really. Of course, Neil Warnock as manager, a very rigid manager in terms of his style of football, whereas you look at Kieran Scott and he's meant to be very forward thinking, bringing in players that maybe have had a past where they haven't been great, but they may fit a style, or just looking for players that could be like the next hidden gem sort of thing. So I think there's 2 conflicting people in different roles there. And then you look at the signings that we brought in. We have spoken about this, but a lot of them seem to be of Neil Warnock's type signings, of course, Uche, Crooks, Peltier, etc. And then the forward-thinking signings that possibly Kieran Scott had an impact on. With Saliki certainly did have was in Kieran Scott's sights, really. I think Neil Warnock had mentioned that Scott had identified him when he was at Norwich. So there you go. That proves that one of them was like a Kieran Scott signing.
To be fair, I think just quickly touching on that, I think that goes to show that, and this is a bit of praise towards Warnock, that relationship can work going forward.
Of course, yeah.
Because Scott said, I've had my eyes on Saliki, I've watched him at Norwich, and Scott, I think, had actually gone out and watched Saliki whilst he was with Norwich in the flesh 2 or 3 times. And then Warnock spoke to a contact of his in France, and that is a perfect example of the relationship that they could have. So to write it off, and again, the phrase transitional period, it doesn't have to be like that, because we're seeing the merge of the style of Kieran Scott and Warnock.
Yeah, of course. I think to say we're in transition is a bit. It's a strange one because, of course,
I think it's almost used as a little bit of a get out of jail card at times.
Yeah, it is, of course. Yeah, I think it is. It is thrown about quite a lot for various clubs that we're in transition. But if the project of transition doesn't work, then are you just continuously in transition? So I think it's one that shouldn't really be thrown about. But when you look at the signings, maybe we're in. I know we've just touched on Saliki there and said that is the merging of Scott and Warnock, but maybe there is a little bit of a conflict of interest between the manager and, of course, like the board that are making signings. I think that maybe needs to be looked at as well.
Yeah, potentially moving forward, of course. It's going to take time to get used to for Scott and for Warnock, because from my prior knowledge, I don't think Warnock's really operated under a sort of head of football or director of football before.
Yeah.
So of course it's going to take time for both of them to get used to, but obviously we've seen with Saliki that it can work. So yeah, I think from the assumptions and the questions, some really good ones again. And as always, thanks for getting in touch and having your thoughts and feelings shared, because obviously it's let us talk and echo some of the thoughts really on the podcast. It always does help us out, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think just going back there, I think I just look at, we are only 6 games into this season, and we're thinking, maybe Warnock's in trouble. Well, I don't know. You got to think, if those chances go in, the one at Derby, the Crooks header at Derby that hits the bar, the Crooks header this weekend, and we pull that back to 1-1, or the chances that we had, the multiple chances through Uche, Jones, and Hernandez. If one of those goes in, I think the game's a different game. And if we go to Coventry and win that game, everyone's thinking, what an away performance that is.
It's
outstanding.
True. It's
so
true.
It is important not to get carried away, although emotions are high after such performances like at the weekend. But yeah, we just move on to the next one, which is of course Forest, which we'll move on to now. But yeah,
I think it is sometimes a case of, one, be careful what you wish for, and two, it could always be worse. And going to Forest, it really could always be worse, because they've picked up 1 point from the opening games. Chris Hughton is under some major pressure at the moment. And I mean, from our perspective, we'll have to go, and for me, I think for anyone really, we have to go there and win.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, isn't it, where you look at things, you look at the table, you look at the start that they've had, and you think, we've got to go there and just attack. We've echoed it. We need to go there and attack and try and put a cat amongst the pig. God above. Throw a cat amongst the pigeons. Jesus God.
Throw something amongst the pigeons. I think that was.
I know. Yeah, and just get at them, sort of thing. They are really struggling at this moment in time. Of course, they went 1-0 up on Sunday, but Cardiff made some changes in that second half and made them pay, really, and they got beat 2-1 at home at the City ground as well. So yeah, they've only got 1 point, which was in the East Midlands derby, which is a good point, all things considered. But
yeah, I mean, we did also draw with Derby, so
we did.
it just goes to show, doesn't it? But yeah, I mean, we're saying we want to go and win, and we think we should go there and win. Obviously, there's no easy games. I think I'm at risk of sounding like any EFL manager. There's never any easy games, but this is a game that we should be good and winning. But Forest do possess a threat. They signed Zinkernagel on loan from Watford. Lewis Graben's always a player that seems to, like Waghorn, actually, ironically, he just always seems to have a good game and score against us.
Crazy.
And there's another player that I want to ask you about with your connection with Lincoln, obviously. Brennan Johnson, come back on loan from Lincoln last season, a player that I've watched a few times and have always really liked. Obviously, there was interest from Brentford in the transfer window. Just a little bit on Johnson and Nathan, and what threat he's going to be against us.
Yeah, of course, I'm not sure if the listeners will know, but I'm at the University of Lincoln, so Brennan Johnson was on loan at Lincoln City last year in League One, and he was a massive part of why they reached the playoff final, really. I think he's only 19 years of age, which is outstanding for how big of a role he played in that Lincoln side. He hit double figures for goals, and he played a huge role in that forward three with Tom Hopper and Morgan Rogers. Rogers, who is at City and is now on loan at Bournemouth in the Championship as well. So yeah, they've both been given the opportunity now to step up and make a difference. And it looks like Johnson's been one of the standout players for Forest so far this season. My mates down there that are Lincoln City fans absolutely love Brennan Johnson. So yeah, he's definitely one to watch out for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think just really, to be honest, like we've said, it's a game that we've got to win for me, for the spirit of the fan base, for Warnock, for the new signings. It's just a game that I feel that if we don't pick up 3 points or don't at least put on some kind of performance, it's only going to add to what is not really too much of a happy fan base at the moment. Now, in this podcast, I was going to go over Blackpool, but I think actually what we should do, Nathan, now this is a little bit of a sneak peek, it's going to be going out tonight. We are going to try and relaunch our Instagram page. So the plan is tomorrow, after full time, we're going to talk about the Forest game, review that, and also talk about the Blackpool game ahead. So there is that to look forward to. I think just finishing up, I just want to talk about Grant Ledbetter. He's retired today. Nathan, I mean, what else can be said? Captain, leader, legend, I think perfectly sums him up, to be honest.
Yeah, I think for me and you, probably the best captain that we've seen really in the flesh for the club. What an outstanding story, really. He was at Ipswich Town and had a bit of family heartache, so wanted to move back up north. Of course, being a Sunderland fan and a former Sunderland player, moving to Middlesbrough in the Championship, Sunderland being in the Premier League at the time, so he wouldn't have got the chance to move back to Sunderland, unfortunately. Moving up north to Middlesbrough, what a player. He was absolutely fantastic for us. What a servant to the football club. And I think there's been plenty of standout moments over the years from Grant Ledbetter. I think one of them that stands out that isn't one of the standouts is an absolute rocket at home to Brentford in the league. But the main ones are his penalty record, which is just ridiculous. His ability to rocket a free kick like Roberto Carlos, which was actually on this day. It was on the On This Day Boro page yesterday, the Huddersfield game, where he smashed in a brace, the free kick, and then that last minute penalty. Then, of course, they've got the moment at Old Trafford where he fired in that one after a knockdown from Negredo, and he loves the celebration as well, Grant Leadbitter.
Yeah, he does, of course.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've got any other standouts for him, Chris, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, from a Middlesbrough fan of our age, I think he's, like you say, probably a lot of people's favourite player. He just epitomised everything that a captain should be. I mean, you spoke of a few memories there, and they're the standout ones, really. We could talk for hours just about Grant Leadbitter, to be honest.
Yeah, we could, yeah.
But just a fantastic footballer, a man of few words, it must be said in his post-match interviews. But yeah, what a captain, and ultimately the man that captained us to the Premier League when we needed him most. So yeah. that's what I have to say about Grant Leadbitter.
And I've just want to touch on one more. Just forgot a standout moment there. QPR away. How did I forget?
One of them.
Yeah. What a captain. What a brilliant captain. And what would we do to have him back in the side now? A prime Grant Leadbitter in midfield.
Yeah. Well, of course, Nathan. I think. Yeah, I'm smiling thinking about it now, and I think that's a good place to end it on. We wish Grant Leadbitter the best of luck going forward with his retirement and whatever he chooses to do. What a man, what a captain, and what a player. And Nathan, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. And as I said earlier, look forward to the Instagram Live tomorrow. I mean, that's going to be our first, so hopefully, technology permitted, it all goes okay. But yeah, thanks for listening, watching it again. Make sure to comment, subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, as I always say, because it helps us apparently, Nathan. So yeah,
I'm sure it will, but hopefully the listeners will want to be seeing more of a optimistic and less pessimistic view. So hopefully Boro go to the City Ground tomorrow and perform, so we don't have to be battering them like in this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Nathan, thanks again, and thank you everyone for watching and listening. We'll see you next week for another podcast.